So he quit and founded the Link Exchange. And he started out there by really just hiring his friends. The company grew and grew, and he ran out of friends, and soon he had 100 people working at the company. And as it grew, kind of the culture changed a little bit and began to drift a little bit. In 1999, he sold the company to Microsoft, and by the way, he did okay on that. He then co-founded an investment firm named Venture Frogs, and they took a stake in an online shoe retailer, Zappos. He kind of quickly realized he missed building things, so he decided to join Zappos full-time. Ultimately, he became the CEO and owner of that company. Zappos, I think as most people in this room know, grew pretty fast under Tony's leadership and vision, eventually becoming a game changer in the online retail sector. Annual revenues grew over a short period of years to over $1 billion a year. That's a lot of shoes. I appreciate that for those of you that want to know in the room. And in late 2009, Amazon purchased Zappos in a deal that was about 1.2 billion in size. One key aspect of this transaction that we were very concerned of, frankly, for the company and for our 16 brands, was what was going to happen. And, we were concerned that Tony, his team, the culture of Zappos, customer, consumer service mindset was going to stay there, this culture of fun. So Amazon wanted to own Zappos, and I think Zappos wanted to really lever the scale and size of Amazon, but they wanted to protect, they've been permitted to protect a very unique company that they created. One of the best quotes, I think, that I remember about from Tony is his quote about Zappos. Zappos is a customer service company that just happens to sell shoes. So, as Jim mentioned, Tony is also a best-selling author, #1 on the New York Times bestseller list when the book came out. Still a book that's read and at the top of the list. A great book, one I recommend to everybody. His definition of happiness and his creative mindset really led him to this latest and probably most ambitious venture, the $350 million downtown project in Las Vegas. Basically, Tony and his team are creating a city. Maybe not a city from scratch, but they're creating a city. So Tony has put both his money and his company where his mouth is. He moved Zappos to the old downtown city hall. He personally invested $350 million in the project between real estate, small businesses, education, culture, tech startups, you name it. The downtown project is focused on revitalizing downtown Las Vegas. The project envisions kind of community-based, pedestrian-friendly, small business-oriented, high-density, high-tech urbanism, the sort of thing that we've been striving for, and with some success here in Grand Rapids for several decades. This project is kind of in the middle of pretty long-term depressed and troubled neighborhoods in Vegas. So what's happening in Vegas today, I believe, is certainly one of the most interesting and fascinating redevelopment city projects in the country today. So this is a timely presentation, timely visit from Tony and his crew for both the Economic Hub and the CEOs for City Convention that's here. It's a great privilege to have Tony here today. Everybody, Tony hsieh.
Wanted to take a quick survey first. How many of you have actually purchased from Zappos before? Oh wow, great. So normally when I do this survey randomly, the ratio is actually about 2 to 1 women to men. And a lot of guys when I ask them that question, they say no, they haven't personally bought from us, but a lot of times it's their wives or significant others have, and a lot of times it's actually on their behalf. And a few years ago, I was giving a tour to an executive from one of the major record labels, and we actually offer tours to the public. So next time any of you are in Vegas, would definitely recommend coming for a tour, we'll pick you up from the airport in a Zappa shuttle, give you a tour, and then drop you off at your hotel afterwards. And so at the time, we actually just relocated our headquarters, which I'll talk a little bit about, to the former City Hall in downtown Vegas. But at the time, we were actually in Henderson, which is a suburb of Las Vegas, spread amongst 3 different buildings. We're at about 1,500 employees right now, and we've continued to grow. We're actually doing about $3 billion a year in gross merchandise sales. And so in the building that I'm in, where I sit is the merchandising department, and then we go upstairs as I'm giving this tour to this executive from one of the major record labels, and I had asked him the exact same question: had he shopped from Zappa's before? And his response was, no, he hadn't personally shopped from us, but he suspected his wife had, because these white boxes would show up on his doorstep, and then they disappeared. He had no idea what was going on. He didn't know if she was buying stuff, returning things, or exchanging things. And every time he asked her, she would just flat out refuse to answer him and change the subject. So I take him upstairs to our customer loyalty team, which is our name for our call center. And when you come for a tour, you'll see there's this whiteboard there, and I'm explaining the different stats on the whiteboard. Number of phone calls we took yesterday, percentage of phone calls we answered in 20 seconds or less, sales through the call center, and so on. And as I'm stepping through these different stats, I turn around, and he's disappeared. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. So I kind of backtrack a little bit, looking for him. And then it turns out, I finally find him. Turns out he had gone halfway down one of our aisles, sat down next to one of our call center reps, and forced her to pull up his wife's account. And he discovered that she had spent over $62,000 in her lifetime. So, hopefully we weren't instrumental to any divorce proceedings or anything like that. So, so this is what our Henderson headquarters look like, and we actually just had our ribbon cutting about 2 weeks ago in downtown Vegas, and so our employees are about half moved in now. And this is what the former City Hall looks like. But we actually announced our plans to move into the former City Hall about, I'd say, almost 3 years ago. And just as it turns out, because we were spread over 3 different buildings, for us at Zappos, our goal is to build our brand to be about the very best customer service and customer experience. But the number 1 priority of the company is actually not customer service. Our number 1 priority is company culture. And our belief is that if we get the culture right, then most of the other stuff like delivering great customer service or building a long-term enduring brand or business will just be a natural byproduct of that. And so as we started growing in our former Henderson offices, being spread amongst 3 different buildings actually had a negative effect on our culture. The people that were at the building at the top of the hill hardly ever saw the people at the buildings that were at the bottom of the hill. And so we'd actually been looking for, I'd say actually probably at least the last 6 or 7 years, for a place anywhere in the Vegas Valley where we could house everyone under one roof and have enough land to expand upon. And it was actually surprisingly hard to find a building that was big enough until we found out that the city was building a new city hall, and this building became available. And so we were actually really excited that we could finally have this permanent headquarters that we could call home. And I actually went and toured, Fred and I actually, we both went and toured some really amazing corporate campuses for inspiration, like Nike, Google, and Apple. And we also surveyed our employees and asked them, what do you want in your dream campus? And got all sorts of responses back. I remember when I toured the Nike campus, one of the buildings had this running track around it that was really beautiful. And then another building had an on-site pub, and we thought to ourselves, we need one of those. And actually, as it turns out, there's jail cells in the former City Hall. So we thought maybe we could turn it into a speakeasy bar or something. And if we do that, I think we should just call it bars. So anyways, we surveyed our employees and asked them, what do you want in our dream campus? And got back responses like an on-site pub and a gym and so on. But the number 1 request we got back from employees was actually doggy daycare. More than human daycare. So And so as we started getting all these responses back from employees, we realized a couple things, actually. One was that we couldn't possibly fit, like we got hundreds and hundreds of suggestions and requests back. One was we couldn't possibly just physically fit those all into this one building. But the second thing we realized as we started thinking about it more was that all those other campuses, Apple, Nike, Google, were beautiful and great for employees, but they were actually really insular and didn't really integrate or contribute to the community around them. And so we thought to ourselves, what if actually we turned the entire concept inside out? What if instead of just focusing on ourselves, we really take an approach that's more analogous to like NYU, where the city kind of blends in with the campus and you don't really know where one begins and the other end? What if we actually encourage our employees to get out into the community and build the campus so that it would encourage folks from the community to come into our campus? And so that's what we decided to do. And by complete magical coincidence, this was a few years ago, a bunch of Zappos employees, myself included, started discovering this area of downtown Vegas called Fremont East that most tourists don't know about. Now, most tourists, when they think Vegas, they think of the casinos like Bellagio on the Strip, which, as it turns out, is actually technically not even in the city of Las Vegas. Or if they know anything about downtown, it's the overhead light show called the Fremont Street Experience and the old casinos. But it turns out that if you actually just go east of Las Vegas Boulevard, there's this whole area that if you went into any of the bars or coffee shops there, you would have no idea you were in Vegas, and there's no gaming, and it's actually the most community-focused place I've ever lived. I grew up in San Francisco, but I've actually never lived in a place where the bar owners hang out in each other's bars just to support each other and support the community. And so it's this complete magical coincidence that this area called Fremont East just happened to be 3 or 4 blocks away from the former City Hall. So it was just one of those things that was just a little bit too good to be true. So that's what led to the formation of a separate company from Zappos called Downtown Project. That's just privately funded by myself and Fred, who will be up here in a little bit, and a couple other individuals. And we didn't take on any outside investors so that we could really take a long-term approach and really do things in the right way. So there's a few different goals. One is to help create a place where you have everything you need to live, work, play within walking distance. Another is to make downtown Vegas the most community-focused large city in the world and probably the place people would least expect it. The third is to make it the co-learning and co-working capital of the world. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the concept of co-working, I think it started out in San Francisco 7 or 8 years ago where a big space like the ballroom we're in was rented out to lots of different tech startups and that were smaller, maybe 2-person startups, 5-person startups, 10-person startups. And so even though they were separate companies, they were all working in the same physical room. And what they learned through that process was that people would overhear each other's conversations and have these serendipitous encounters that led to innovation and new ideas and conversations and collaboration. And as it turned out, the companies generally became more innovative and more productive, and the concept has worked so well that now there are literally thousands and thousands of co-working spaces all around the world. But now not just in tech, but also in fashion and culinary and photography. And you can imagine really building a co-working space around anything that you can build a community around. And so that's one of the things that we're really focused on for downtown Vegas is building out tech co-working spaces and fashion co-working spaces and photography and so on. So almost a community of communities. And so what makes us different from most real estate redevelopment projects is that rather than having these kind of short to medium term ROI goals or cash flow needs, because we don't have any outside investors, we really focus on, instead of maximizing the short-term ROI, maximizing the long-term ROC, return on community. And that's kind of the filter through which we view all of our investments, whether it's on the small business side or on the tech side. And then there's also this other concept, the acronym that I stole from Jim Collins' latest book, Great by Choice, ROL. We're really focused on maximizing the return on luck, which sounds like a really strange thing to, like, how can you actually increase your luck? But we actually do a lot of very purposeful thinking and even have metrics about how do you actually think about serendipity, accelerating serendipity and making people in the community luckier. And I'll go into some of that a little bit later in the presentation. And so the big bet is, by focusing on these 3 C's, collisions, meaning people having these serendipitous encounters, running into each other, focusing on collisions, community, and co-learning, that's going to lead to not only a happier and luckier community, but actually innovation and productivity increases. And so a quick breakdown of how the budget is broken up. $50 million is invested into small businesses to help build a sense of neighborhood and community, make the neighborhood walkable. And this is actually the wall at my apartment, and we have a separate downtown project tour that actually goes through my apartment. And when people go through, we show them this wall, and basically we're very anti kind of top-down master planning, and we want the growth to be organic. And so we just ask people, what do you want in your dream neighborhood? And if it's not already on the wall, we encourage them to write it down on a post-it note and put it on the wall. But the other really cool thing that happens every once in a while is we get someone whose lifelong dream is to, say, retire 10 years from now and start a cupcake bakery. And we say, well, rather than wait 10 years, why don't we invest in you now? And then you can start living your dream now, and it'll help build out the neighborhood as well. And so we have a few different criteria. Probably the most important ones are that it needs to help build community, and the entrepreneurs that we're investing in need to care more than just about their business, but also care about helping out the other small businesses. Unique first or best is really important to us. We've had some people come to us and say, oh, there's this great bar concept that I've seen in 7 other cities, and you should do one here as well. And we say, well, we don't want to be the it. We want to have our own unique identity. And story-worthy is important to us as well. And so this is Natalie, and I serendipitously met her at the local coffee shop a little over a year ago, probably about a year and a half ago, and it turns out that she had actually just quit her job. She was a chef at one of the casino cafes, had been a chef for 10 years and was sick of working in a casino environment, and had actually packed up her bags and was leaving town to go back to another state. And as we started talking, it turns out that her lifelong dream was to open up her own breakfast and lunch place. And so she actually ended up being one of the first small businesses that we funded. And you can see her place under construction. This is from about a year ago. And I'm not really a PowerPoint person, but I'm very proud of this transition. So we're going to watch it. And then you can see some of the things under construction. And then she actually just had her 1-year anniversary 2 weeks ago. As it turns out, she ended up doing triple her initial projections, and her place has become this new daytime community hub where, you know, if you walk in and have breakfast or lunch during that period, you're probably going to run into 5 or 10 people you know that are also in the community. This is a check cashing place, and last year it was still a check cashing place. This is what it looked like inside. And then this is Sarah, whose lifelong dream was to open up her own boutique clothing store. And this has been, and she actually describes it, this was another small business investment of ours, as a hangout place that happens to sell clothing. And people in the community actually go in and co-work and check in several times a day, even if they're not buying anything. We're also next month set to open a shipping container park. And this is actually Ernie, who used to be a Zappos employee several years ago, and he left Zappos so that he could pursue his passion of making barbecue sauce and cooking barbecue meat. And he was going to farmers markets and catering and so on. And I just happened to walk down the street one day, and he's actually going to be attending in one of the shipping containers. It just so happened that's his shipping container restaurant that's being lowered behind him. And I got the picture, and so he was super excited that he's actually going to be running his own actual restaurant now next month. And this shipping container park, there's actually a lot of different elements to it. It's a little over, I think it's like 1.2 acres. That's actually a 40-foot praying mantis that shoots out 12-foot flames from Burning Man. And so there'll be nighttime and daytime programming. I think it's 40 retail outlets, 5 food and beverage. And it's kind of hard to see, but towards the top there's an outdoor live music stage. And the focus, though, is in the center, where we basically want to build a kid's paradise. There'll be a 24-foot tall Swiss Family Robinson type of treehouse, these giant Lego blocks, and the idea is make it such a fun place for kids that they're begging their parents to go back every weekend, but the parents can actually sit on outside the playground, enjoy their wine and cheese, watch the live music, and then with all of the retail elements, we're actually going to be incorporating some educational component for the kids as well. So they can go to the flower shop, for example, and learn how to arrange flowers or something, and have that different activities and education happening all around. We're also, one of our goals is to get people to get rid of their cars, so we're investing in bike sharing, as well as a car sharing program, which Zach will be able to talk about when he's up here. We actually placed the largest US order of Teslas a few months ago, and so part of the goal is to get people so that make it really easy for them to get rid of their cars and make sure that there's all sorts of electric vehicles, Tesla and smaller vehicles, available for people to navigate around downtown. So that's kind of the small business side. On the tech side, we've set aside $50 million to invest in tech startup companies, and in the past year we've relocated about, I'd say, over 30 tech companies that have relocated from other states or even countries to downtown Vegas. And part of the reason why they want to come is really this whole, this sense of community that they haven't really experienced. We actually just had a team from China, a 20-person team, that was about to move to Silicon Valley, came to downtown Vegas for a couple of days, and then decided to move there instead. And so part of it is really the sense of community, but the other reason we've found out that tech folks want to move to downtown Vegas is really this whole idea of the city as a startup, and how many opportunities do you have in a lifetime to help shape the future of a major city. We're partnering with Venture for America, which is like Teach for America, but for college graduates that want to become entrepreneurs. And partnering with Teach for America to do not only what they already do, but also they're relocating their Vegas headquarters to downtown. We, just a few weeks ago, opened up an early childhood center that's teaching initially kids 6 weeks through kindergarten, but we're actually going to be adding a couple grades every year, so it'll eventually include K through 12. Teaching kids entrepreneurship and creativity using the latest neuroscience research. And we took over a festival called First Friday. So First Friday, every month, 20 to 25,000 people show up. And we actually partnered with the founders of Burning Man to do the first urban burn, and also bringing large-scale art to downtown Vegas. And so this is actually a 45-foot tall thing that you can actually crawl up into and put a DJ on top. And the idea is by having different large-scale art and fire elements to just get people to walk one more block, and then put something else like that praying mantis to get them to walk another block. And Vegas is not actually typically known to be a walking city, and that's something that we're trying to change the behavior of. And then actually last weekend of October, so I think we're less than 4 weeks away now, we're actually doing this festival called Life is Beautiful. And it's actually 4 festivals in one. It's a music festival, and there's 65 bands, it's a culinary festival, over 50 celebrity chefs, it's an art festival, and it's also a learning/speakers festival. So each one of those is its own festival, but it's all happening within the same footprint. And we're actually fencing off 15 city blocks, which has never been done before in any city. So it's almost like South by Southwest meets Coachella. And so I actually have a video to show. This video, just to intro the video. This video was made by one of our other small business investments called Downtown Films. And the video first came out in June when people didn't know what bands were playing or which celebrity chefs were going to be there. And this video kind of reveals one by one the different bands that are playing at the festival. So let's play the video, please. And then this is actually a book I would highly recommend everyone read, even if you're not involved in city revitalization stuff. It's a super interesting book called Triumph of the City, written by a Harvard economics professor that studied cities from all different time periods, like Rome, New York, Detroit, and looked at why some thrived and some didn't. And a lot of the findings are actually kind of surprising and counterintuitive, but we're actually using the research that he's done or cites to guide a lot of our thinking for our downtown project. And one of the most interesting stats, I think, is that every time the size of a city doubles, innovation or productivity per resident increases by 15%. But when companies get bigger, generally productivity per employee goes down. So from the Zappos point of view, part of the reason why we're doing what we're doing is because we want to avoid that fate, and we actually want to help create this interesting dynamic between corporation, community, and city that's never really been attempted at this scale before. And the ingredients for that to happen are, number one, a residential density of 100 residents per acre, combined with street level activity for those residents to collide with each other, and so all those post-it notes that are on my apartment wall. And number three, the third ingredient, is probably the hardest, but also the cheapest, and the one that gives you the most leverage, this culture of openness and collaboration and sharing. And I think of it as a multiplier. So if people are twice as likely to talk to each other, then maybe you only need half that residential density. And the reason why these collisions are so important is because the research has shown that most innovation actually comes from something outside your industry being applied to your own. And so it's when you have that chance encounter or that random conversation with someone that you weren't necessarily seeking out, and that the ideas really bubble from there. And so, as it turns out, a lot of the stuff that we've been thinking about at Zappos over the past 14 years actually apply at the city level as well. You know, for us at Zappos, culture has always been really important to us. And in fact, it's the #1 priority of the company. And so we've been thinking a lot over the last 14 years. How do we build our culture? How do we scale our culture? How do we get employees to run into each other, collide with each other more often in the office environment? And we think about things like office density. It turns out that average office density in the United States is about 200 or 300 square feet per employee. In our Henderson offices, we're at 120 square feet per employee. And at our new offices now, we're at under 100 square feet per employee. And the reason why we care so much about density in the office is because the research has shown that if you sit twice as far away from someone in an office environment, you don't see them half as often. You see them half as often squared, so a quarter as often. And at Zappos, we actually prioritize collisions over convenience. So in our Henderson offices, the building I was in actually had doors on all four sides of the building, and the previous tenant just let employees go in and out whichever door was most convenient to them. And the parking lot was behind the building. Well, we actually closed all the doors and forced employees to park in the back of the building, walk all the way around into the front of the building, because we want more employees colliding with each other in that lobby. And then for our new campus, the city employees, it's off to the left of it, is actually where the parking garage is. And the city employees who park in that parking garage go through that sky bridge there and then wind up in the building. Well, we actually shut down that sky bridge for our employees so that after they park in the building, they actually have to walk out, which promotes more collision opportunities for them with the community and with each other, and then they go around to the other side of the building through the central plaza that we're really thinking of as almost an outdoor lobby. And so the big bet is just have all these different interesting, creative, entrepreneurial groups colliding, and this is just a partial list now, and just statistically, if you put them in a relatively small space together, the magic will just kind of happen on its own. And one of our realizations was that culture is to a company as community is to a city. It's the exact same concept, just at a different scale. This is actually the building that I live in. There's, I think, about 275 units in there, about 500 bedrooms total. And collectively, between Zappos employees, downtown project employees, and employees at companies we've invested in, we're actually leasing about half the units in there. And of those, we've actually set up 100 bedrooms as basically furnished apartments, free hotel rooms. And anytime we meet someone interesting, we just say, hey, next time you're in Vegas, come stay with us. It's a free hotel room. And they take us up on that offer, and basically what ends up happening is they're basically tricked into going to the local coffee shop and the local bars, and they discover the community on their own. And then the other thing that actually totally unintended side effect, which makes sense in retrospect, but we didn't think about, was that those people, in addition to discovering the community, also end up meeting each other. And so we've actually had people that come back on a regular basis. Some people come back quarterly, some people come back monthly, because it's a different experience each time. And because we're inviting people that we think are interesting and friendly, and basically curating the visitors, that it becomes this really interesting experience for them. And then every week now we're hosting probably about 100 people, and then we just look through the list and pick about 20 of them, and we ask them, hey, as long as you're in town, do you want to give a 20-minute talk about whatever you're passionate about or what you're working on? And I'd say 95% of people say yes, and we open that, and we basically host these talks that are free to the community, and we have this ongoing content from all sorts of interesting visitors. So we've had like the CEO of Whole Foods come and speak, and the producer of Batman, and Morgan Spurlock, who did Super Size Me, and then we also had someone who figured out how to merge the DNA of a firefly in a plant to make a glow-in-the-dark plant. And then all sorts of different social entrepreneurs and folks from the technology world. And so one of the things that we realized is, like, TED is this great annual conference that we're part. There's two reasons to go, whether it's TED or Summit Series or South by, to go to these conferences. Half the reason to go is the content, and the other half is no matter who you run into, they're doing something interesting to change the world. And what Downtown Vegas has kind of evolved into is, it's almost like we're throwing a mini TED conference every single week. And so I think of it as almost like South by Southwest meets TED meets Burning Man, but as a lifestyle instead of as an annual event. And so on probably the most prominent corner of all of Las Vegas, Fremont Street and Las Vegas Boulevard, we bought the building there, and rather than turn it into an easy money maker like a bar or a McDonald's and so on, we actually this is opening up next month, it's under construction right now, of building a speakers theater called the Inspire Theater. And the thought behind it is, imagine if, whether you're a visitor or someone in the community, you could just go in there Wednesday afternoon through Sunday afternoon, and there's someone giving an interesting TED-like talk about something, and you just learn something just by walking in, and it's a short 15, 20-minute talk. And so it's going to be 2 stories plus a rooftop bar, and it'll also house Vegas's largest magazine rack, and it'll have these different collaboration and co-working spaces around it in order to promote more collisions and more learning as well. And so we've actually started theming each of the different weeks now within each month. And so for every month, the first week of every month is First Friday, so it's arts and music focused. The second week of every month is a tech focus week where tech entrepreneurs and investors come into town and give talks that are related to tech. Third week of every month is fashion focused, and so there are designers, famous designers that will tell the story of how they got there, and then there's a lot of just designers, emerging designers that are just starting